The coastal fog had rolled in early that Saturday afternoon, softening the edges of the cliffs at Carmel by the Sea. From our tiny balcony, the rhythmic crashing of waves below should have calmed me. Instead, my hands trembled violently as I stared at my phone. 5 times I had read the same message, each time hoping the words might magically change. Sorry, Madison. We won't be attending your tiny wedding. It's too far to travel for something so small. It was signed with my mother's name, Elaine Turner, cold and formal like a stranger. The next notification buzzed before I could even blink. Samantha, then Vanessa, David, Jason. One after another, my siblings piled on with some version of the same cruel dismissal. We'll be thinking of you, but we can't make it. It just doesn't seem worth the travel for a backyard ceremony. My vision blurred. I sank onto the wrought tent chair by the railing, curling my legs under me as the late spring chill bit into my skin. The salt air stung my eyes, though it wasn't the wind that brought the tears. I couldn't even respond. I had no words, only a hollow, sinking ache in my chest. Madison. Nathan's voice cut through the haze. I hadn't heard him come outside. My fiancé knelt beside me, his warm hand closing gently over mine. Babe, what's wrong? I couldn't speak. I simply tilted the screen toward him. His dark eyes scanned the text, his brows knitting deeper with every line. When he reached the last one, he exhaled sharply, his jaw tightening. They're actually doing this, I nodded weakly. Not a single one of them is coming. My voice cracked and fell to a whisper. Not even my mom. Nathan stared out toward the horizon, the late afternoon sun casting a cold silver glow over the restless water. We've been planning this for over a year, he said quietly. The most breathtaking spot in all of California. 30 people, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Every detail perfect because it mattered to you, and they're dismissing it like it's a barbecue in someone's backyard. I pressed my palm against my forehead. They've always treated me like the afterthought, like I was just the extra. Nathan sighed and pulled me into his arms. I stiffened at first, but then I let myself lean into his steady warmth. We knew this could happen, Mads, he murmured. We knew they've never valued what's truly important. But this day isn't about them. I closed my eyes, breathing in the faint scent of cedarwood cologne clinging to his shirt. I wished his words could erase the ache. They couldn't. They think we're poor, I whispered bitterly. They think our small guest list means we couldn't afford a real wedding. Nathan gave a short, humorless laugh. If only they knew. 6 months earlier, Nathan had quietly sold his tech startup for a figure so large I couldn't even say it out loud. The money sat untouched except for this wedding, our dream day, which was now becoming my private nightmare. We had chosen to tell no one, not even our closest friends, let alone my family. We wanted to be seen for who we were, not what we had. Let them believe what they wanted. Nathan brushed my damp cheek softly. We can still walk away from this, you know. Courthouse wedding. Sunset elopement. We don't have to give them the satisfaction of ruining our joy. I shook my head, swallowing the lump that had taken residence in my throat. No, they don't get to take this from me, too. I stared out at the darkening water, the sun slipping slowly behind the veil of fog. We moved forward, with or without them. The wind picked up as if answering me. Nathan squeezed my hand. Then we'll make it the most beautiful day imaginable for us and only us. My phone buzzed once more. A group family chat notification. Samantha had posted. My stomach clenched. I tapped it open with dread. Well, at least Madison won't have to worry about real expectations. Can't wait to see how low budget this will be. The tears froze mid-fall. Something inside me snapped, not with sadness this time, but with an icy wave of clarity. I stared at the screen until my vision cleared. Then I lowered the phone onto my lap, my heartbeat finally slowing as a strange calm settled over me. They thought they could humiliate me, They thought I'd crumble like I always had before. Not this time. The next morning, I stood alone at the wide glass window of our apartment, watching the early light creep slowly across the sea. I cradled my coffee cup, letting the heat burn against my frozen fingers. Sleep had been impossible. The cruel messages echoed in my mind like a bitter chant. Backyard wedding. Not worth it. Low expectations. The steam from my cup drifted lazily upward. And suddenly, the years peeled back like pages of an old, worn book. I was 7 again, standing at the edge of our backyard in Sacramento, clutching a deflated balloon from Vanessa's elaborate birthday party. She had a magician, a pony, a bouncy castle. My birthday 2 weeks earlier had been a store-bought cake on a paper plate in the kitchen. I had asked why mine was different. My mother had laughed softly and patted my head. "You're too sensitive, Madison." At 12, I sat in the back seat of the family minivan as it sped toward Lake Tahoe for the annual family vacation. Only this time, I wasn't supposed to be there. They had forgotten to tell me about the trip. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, who had called my mom after seeing me sitting alone on the porch steps in tears. "I assumed you had plans, sweetie," my mother had said lightly when they turned around to get me. 17. My senior year, awards night. I stood on the auditorium stage, clutching my scholarship certificate, searching the crowd. Samantha's entire volleyball team had shown up for her championship. My parents and siblings? They were at Jason's college game, 3 hours away. "We're so proud of you, Mads," my father had told me afterward. "But Jason only has one senior season. You understand." The memories stabbed like icy needles, every overlooked achievement, every forgotten birthday, every family photo where I stood just slightly out of frame. I had spent a lifetime shrinking myself to fit their narrative. The quiet one, the easy one, the don't make a scene, child. I blinked hard, and the vision of my childhood backyard faded, replaced by the stunning expanse of ocean outside our window. Nathan's arms slid around my waist from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "You've been standing here a long time," he murmured. "I know what you're thinking." I leaned into him, grateful for his warmth. "They've always made me feel like the spare part. The extra, well, they didn't ask for," my voice cracked. I thought maybe the wedding would be different. Maybe they'd finally show up for me. Nathan held me tighter. "You wanted to believe this time would be the exception." I nodded silently, watching the waves below toss and roll, indifferent to my pain. I just wanted one day where I wasn't the afterthought. Nathan kissed my temple softly. "You are never the afterthought to me." For the first time that morning, I smiled faintly. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, eyes rimmed with fatigue, but somewhere inside a small ember remained. They had rejected me over and over, but this time I would not shrink. This time I would not disappear quietly into the background. I set down the empty cup and turned slowly to face Nathan. My voice was calm, steady. "I'm done begging for their approval. We're going to have the wedding we planned, with or without them." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded in silent agreement. "With or without them." The days that followed blurred into a constant rhythm of details and decisions, seating charts, floral arrangements, last-minute fittings. I buried myself in the checklist, convincing myself that focusing on perfection could numb the ache inside. It didn't. Every time I touched my wedding dress, a custom-made creation that had taken 6 months and more money than I dared admit, I imagined my sisters gossiping cruelly behind their phones. Backyard wedding. Probably some cheap online dress. I ran my hand down the intricate lace bodice, now hanging solemnly from the bedroom door. My eyes stung again. At 10 a.m. On Wednesday, Rachel knocked gently and let herself in, balancing a tray of herbal tea and freshly baked scones. "You forgot to eat again," she scolded, her warm southern accent softening the words. Rachel was my neighbor, 72 years young, a widow who had become my unexpected confidant since Nathan, and I moved to Carmel. Where my family had turned away, Rachel had stepped in without hesitation, filling the empty spaces with kindness I had stopped believing existed. "You're wasting away, child." She set the tray down and pulled me into a gentle hug. I let myself melt for a moment into her familiar lavender scent. Rachel stood back, studying me through sharp blue eyes. "They don't deserve your tears." I shook my head miserably. "It's not about them anymore. I keep picturing the empty chairs where they were supposed to sit. I wanted to walk down the aisle and see their faces. Even if they didn't approve, I thought they would still come." Rachel sighed, taking my hand. "Madison, listen to me. Some people only show up when there's something in it for them. That's not love. Love is showing up when it matters." I bit my lip hard, nodding slowly. I knew she was right. I just didn't know how to stop grieving what should have been. By Friday, Nathan and I met with the florist at the cliffside venue. The afternoon sun shimmered gold over the crashing waves as I stood frozen, staring at the breathtaking view. White roses, peonies, and delicate blue delphiniums would soon line the pathway where I would walk alone toward the man who had chosen me without condition. Nathan squeezed my hand gently. "This is going to be beautiful," he whispered. I smiled weakly, the wind catching my veil mockingly as if to remind me of the emptiness that still lingered. Later that night, back in our apartment, I spread out the final seating plan. 30 names. Friends. Colleagues. Mentors. No family. I stared at the list under the soft pool of light from the kitchen lamp. My chest tightened painfully. I thought of all the weddings I had attended for my siblings, the speeches, the tears, the family portraits that would never exist for me. Nathan walked in and stopped when he saw my face. "Mads!" I looked up at him, blinking back the fresh wave of hurt. "We invited them. We tried. They made their choice," I whispered brokenly. "They made it so easy to walk away from me." Nathan crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling me into his arms. "You are not easy to walk away from," he said fiercely. "You are everything." I pressed my face against his chest and let the walls I had held up all week crumble. Silent sobs racking my body. They had rejected me, but I was done letting them define me. Tomorrow I would reclaim my day. 10 days before the wedding. I had just returned from the final cake tasting when my phone buzzed violently on the kitchen counter. A new notification glared at me from the dreaded family group chat. My stomach dropped. I hesitated, knowing nothing good ever came from opening that thread. But my thumb betrayed me. The message from Samantha stared back like venom on glass. "Can't wait to see what Pinterest-inspired backyard disaster Madison has planned. Wonder if they'll have plastic chairs and potluck." The words punched the air from my lungs. I stumbled back against the counter, feeling the cold marble edge bite into my spine. A second notification. Vanessa had replied, "Please, Sam, you know Madison. She probably thinks her $100 dress is couture. I bet they're doing cupcakes instead of a real cake, too." I stood frozen, trembling, my cheeks burning with humiliation. The bile rose in my throat. I barely made it to the bathroom before I collapsed to my knees, retching until there was nothing left but emptiness. They weren't content to simply decline. They had to broadcast their mockery to the entire extended family. I lay on the cool tile floor, staring blankly at the ceiling, my heart hammering painfully against my ribs. I had never felt smaller. The door creaked open gently. "Mads!" Nathan's worried voice. A soft knock. "Are you okay?" I couldn't speak, couldn't move. The sob built in my chest again, sharp and jagged. Nathan knelt beside me, gathering me carefully into his arms, rocking me like a child. What happened? Wordlessly, I handed him my phone. He read the messages in stunned silence, his jaw clenching tighter with each word. Finally, he whispered, "They're disgusting, absolutely cruel." I buried my face against his chest, tears soaking into his shirt. "I can't do this anymore. I can't take their hate, not this time." Nathan pulled back just enough to look me dead in the eyes. Listen to me. His voice was low, fierce. You do not let people like that define your worth. You are not their punching bag. I wiped my face with trembling fingers. I thought after all these years they might change, he shook his head slowly. They won't. People like that rarely do. But you know what we can do. I blinked at him through the tears. What? Nathan smiled grimly, brushing the damp strands of hair from my face. We can make this the wedding of the century. We can show them exactly what they walked away from, and we won't say a single cruel word in return. Just elegance, just grace. For the first time that night, something inside me shifted. Not revenge, exactly. Something colder, sharper dignity. I nodded slowly. You're right. They chose this. I didn't. Nathan kissed my forehead softly. Exactly. I stared back at my phone. The words still burned like acid on the screen, but now they couldn't touch me. The decision crystallized in my mind. I would not let them ruin my day. I would not let their absence cast a shadow over my happiness. I would rise higher than they could ever imagine. They would regret this, not through my anger, but through what they would never get to witness. 1 week before the wedding, the sun had long disappeared beyond the horizon. Only the silver glow of the moon danced faintly on the dark waves below. I stood motionless on the balcony, wrapped tightly in Nathan's soft navy robe, staring out at the endless ocean. The familiar ache sat heavy in my chest, a hollow reminder of what could have been. Nathan stepped outside, quietly, slipping an arm around my waist. His warmth steadied me. You haven't moved for an hour, he murmured gently. I keep thinking about the chairs, I whispered. The chairs? The empty ones. I paused, blinking at the distant lights of fishing boats, where they were supposed to sit. My mother, my siblings. Their absence is going to feel like a wound in the middle of everything. Nathan kissed the top of my head, then pulled back slowly. His voice was cautious, thoughtful. There's something I've been thinking about. It might be a little petty. I turned my face toward him, curiosity softening the tight knot in my chest. I'm listening. He gave a small grin. What if we go all in? I frowned. All in. Nathan gestured toward the night sky. We've already spared no expense on everything else. What if we hire the best photographer in California? Not just someone good, someone famous, someone used to shooting celebrity weddings. We capture every single perfect detail. The flowers, the sunset, your dress, the table settings, the dance, all of it, every frame flawless. I stared at him, stunned by the idea, and then, we don't post a single thing, not right away. We wait. His eyes locked with mine. A month, maybe more. Then, just when they've convinced themselves they were right, we release a few photos. No comments, no captions designed to hurt. Just images so breathtaking that the world will see exactly what they chose to miss. I blinked, my heart racing. You're serious? Nathan nodded. I am. A slow, disbelieving smile spread across my lips, the first genuine smile in days. That's wildly petty. Petty can be therapeutic, he said with mock solemnity. I laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. The tension eased from my shoulders, the weight lifting just slightly. It would be a reminder without ever saying a word. Exactly. We stay gracious. We stay silent. And we let the truth speak louder than anything they ever said. I inhaled deeply, feeling the salt air fill my lungs. The plan was bold, simple, and deliciously elegant. I nodded slowly. Let's do it. Nathan grinned and tugged me gently back inside, where warm candlelight flickered across the walls. The next morning I made the call. The photographer Nathan had in mind wasn't just expensive. She was nearly impossible to book. But when I described the location, the vision, and the story without naming names, she agreed instantly. I'll make it look like a royal wedding, she promised confidently. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control. I felt empowered. They had mocked me, abandoned me, and humiliated me in public, but they would never steal my dignity. I would not be bitter. I would not be cruel. But they would see what they had missed. Oh, yes, they would see. The morning of May 28th arrived like a whispered promise. Clear skies, a soft breeze. The cliffs at Carmel by the Sea shimmered under a blanket of golden sunlight as waves danced below. It was as if the universe had conspired to give me a perfect canvas. I stood before the floor-length mirror in the private bridal suite of the estate, my breath catching as I gazed at my reflection. The gown meticulously hand-stitched from French lace and silk tulle, fit like a dream. A cathedral-length veil cascaded behind me, edged in delicate pearls. Rachel stood behind me, eyes glassy. "My lord," she whispered, dabbing the corner of her eye with a tissue, "you look like you walked out of a fairy tale." The music outside drifted faintly up the hillside. My heart raced, not with nerves, but with something I hadn't expected. Peace. There would be empty chairs. They had made their decision. But the people who had shown up, the people who had chosen me, were enough. Nathan stood at the altar below, a silhouette against the rolling ocean, his dark suit sharp and classic, his face turned expectantly toward the winding path of white rose petals where I would soon appear. I breathed deeply, nodded at Rachel, and stepped out. The gentle sound of a string quartet rose as I walked slowly toward the crowd of 30 cherished guests. My best friends, former professors, colleagues who had become family. Each smiled warmly as I passed, their eyes filled with kindness. The platform where we would exchange vows had been transformed into a masterpiece of cascading white orchids and flickering candlelight. The Pacific Ocean stretched out endlessly behind it, the water glinting like liquid sapphire under the noon sun. When Nathan's gaze met mine, his lips parted slightly. His eyes glistened. "You are breathtaking." I smiled softly as I reached his side. My fingers trembled as they laced through his. The ceremony unfolded like a dream. We spoke our own vows under the open sky, voices barely above a whisper, yet carrying on the ocean breeze. Nathan's words pierced straight into my soul. "I vow to be your family now, and always, the one who shows up, the one who never leaves you standing alone." I swallowed hard, barely able to speak through the emotion constricting my throat. I vow to never let the absence of others define my worth. I choose you, Nathan. I choose this life we will build together. As the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, a soft cheer rippled through our guests. Nathan swept me into his arms for our first kiss as a married couple. The ocean behind us seemed to glow, the setting sun casting a halo of light that the photographer later said was so perfect it didn't seem real. The reception took place inside a glass-walled pavilion perched atop the cliffs. Long tables were draped in hand-embroidered linens. Hundreds of white roses spilled from towering vases. Crystal glasses sparkled beside gold-rimmed plates. Our guests gasped audibly when the first course arrived, a delicate lobster bisque served in Venetian glass bowls, paired with vintage champagne that cost more than my first car. Rachel leaned over and whispered conspiratorially, "They called it tiny?" She shook her head. "If this is tiny, I can't imagine grand." I laughed, the sound bubbling from somewhere deep and free inside me. As the sun melted into the sea, casting brilliant shades of pink and orange across the waves, Nathan and I danced our first dance on a custom-built Italian marble floor imported just for this night. The music wrapped around us like silk as the photographer circled silently, capturing every stolen glance and whispered laugh. By midnight, the party was still alive with energy. We dined on 7 exquisite courses and cut into a 5-tier cake flown in from a Parisian pâtisserie. The guests sipped rare wines, danced barefoot under the stars, and marveled at the night sky. At 2 a.m., just as the evening began to wind down, Our final surprise lit up the dark expanse over the ocean. A spectacular fireworks display choreographed to our favorite song. Bursts of gold and silver rained down into the waves, the reflections glittering like 1,000 tiny suns. Nathan wrapped his arms around me from behind as the last firework faded. "No regrets," he murmured softly into my ear. I watched the quiet water settle again. The ache was still there, the missing faces, the cold chairs that had remained empty. "Just one," I whispered, leaning back against him. "They'll never know what they missed." Nathan kissed my temple, his voice rich with satisfaction. "Oh, they will." For weeks later, the wedding album arrived in a heavy leather-bound box, wrapped with a satin ribbon. I ran my fingers reverently across the embossed gold lettering. Inside were the most stunning images I had ever seen. The platform of white roses overlooking the endless sea. The dramatic sweep of my veil caught by the ocean breeze. Our first kiss with the sun casting molten gold behind us. Nathan sat across from me at the kitchen table, scrolling through the digital proofs on his tablet. He glanced up at my expression. "They're ready," he said quietly. I nodded. I had rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times. Part of me had wondered if I could go through with it, but then I remembered every cruel message, every snide remark, every moment they had made me feel invisible. That morning, I selected just 3 photos, the perfect trifecta. The first showed the ceremony setup, 30 pristine white chairs, an ocean backdrop, the floral arch cascading down into perfection. The second captured the reception table at sunset, crystal and gold sparkling under flickering candlelight, the silhouettes of our guests laughing and toasting under the dusky sky. The third, the most devastating, Nathan and me dancing alone on the marble floor, my gown glinting like diamonds. The entire scene looking more like a royal gala than a private wedding. I uploaded them with a simple, understated caption. 1 month ago today, I married the love of my life in the most perfect, intimate ceremony overlooking the Pacific. Small, meaningful, absolutely perfect. Hashtag just married, hashtag 1 month anniversary, and I waited. It didn't take long. Within an hour, my phone exploded with notifications. Friends who had attended commented immediately, gushing over how magical the night had been. Then came the others, colleagues, neighbors, acquaintances. Words like breathtaking, spectacular, looks like a movie set, and this is the most beautiful wedding I've ever seen flooded the comment section. And then the silence broke. My youngest sister, Megan, was first. A private message blinked onto my screen. "WTF, Madison?" My fingers hovered over the reply button, but I said nothing. 2 minutes later, Samantha commented publicly under the photos. "This doesn't look tiny at all. Why didn't you tell us it was going to be like this?" Vanessa added shortly after, "We assumed it was going to be something casual. You never told us it would be this extravagant." I stared at the screen, feeling my heartbeat slow. I showed the phone to Nathan, who sat working at his laptop. His face remained unreadable as he scrolled through the desperate comments. "Feel good?" he asked finally. I thought about it. The rush of vindication was undeniable. The same people who had mocked me, who had called it a backyard mess, were now scrambling to rewrite the narrative. "Yes," I admitted, "but underneath that, I also feel sad. They don't regret missing my wedding because they love me. They regret missing a photo opportunity." Nathan reached across the table and took my hand firmly. "That's on them, Madison. You gave them every chance to show up for you. They chose not to. They have to live with it." The phone vibrated again. My mother this time. I let it go to voicemail, but seconds later a text came through. "Call me immediately. We need to talk." I sighed, showing it to Nathan. "Up to you," he said, his voice gentle but steady. With a deep breath, I dialed. My mother answered instantly. "Madison," she blurted, "those photos, that was your wedding?" "That's not what we expected." I closed my eyes. "Yes, Mom, that was my wedding. The tiny one you all decided wasn't worth attending. There was a long pause. I could hear her struggling for words, but it must have cost a fortune. I cut her off, my voice low and calm. Does it matter? Would you have come if you had known there'd be expensive flowers and fancy photographs? Her silence told me everything. That's what I thought, I whispered. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up and turned back to Nathan. Tears slipped silently down my cheeks as he pulled me close. They'll never admit it, but they'll never forget it either, he murmured against my hair. I nodded against his chest. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. They had made their choice. I had made mine, and they would never get another chance to hurt me again. The following days unfolded like a surreal blur. Messages from extended family, old friends, even my high school English teacher poured in, all wanting to know more about the wedding. Not one of the messages contained a genuine apology. Not one acknowledged that they had actively chosen not to come. Instead, they fixated on how they had been misled, as if I owed them a full budget breakdown before they would deem my wedding worthy of their presence. Nathan sat across from me one morning as I scrolled through yet another barrage of notifications over coffee. What do you want to do? He asked gently. We can block them if you need space. I shook my head slowly. No, I want to have it out once and for all. The phone rang again. My oldest sister, Samantha. I put it on speaker so Nathan could hear. Madison, she began sharply. I can't believe you would do this to us. You made us look terrible. I closed my eyes, steadying my voice. I did nothing to you. You chose not to come. You called my wedding not worth the trip. Those were your words. There was a beat of stunned silence. You never told us it was going to be that fancy, Samantha sputtered weakly. I smiled bitterly. So, you would have only come for expensive food and a good photo op? That's what family means to you. Another pause. That's not fair, she whispered. No, I said firmly. What wasn't fair was abandoning your sister because you assumed you wouldn't get anything out of it. The conversation ended awkwardly. I set the phone down with shaking hands, but also with a strange sense of peace. I had finally said everything I had held back for years. Over the next week, the same conversation played out with other family members. My brothers were less confrontational, but just as self-justifying. My father sent a card and a check as if that could replace actually showing up. Only Megan, my youngest sister, showed true remorse. 2 weeks later, she knocked nervously at our door. I opened it to find her eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Madison. I can't believe I missed your wedding because I thought it wasn't going to be impressive enough. I hugged her tightly. For the first time since all this began, I felt the crushing weight begin to lift. We sat with glasses of wine, paging through the wedding album together. Megan gasped over every photo. It wasn't just about how beautiful it was, she said quietly. It's how every single detail told your story with Nathan. It was perfect because it was you. I blinked back tears. That's exactly what we wanted. Then, tentatively, Megan asked the question I knew would eventually come. How did you afford all this? Nathan and I exchanged a look. He gave a small nod. I sold my company last year, he said simply. We never wanted anyone to know. We wanted the day to be about love, not money. Megan shook her head, her eyes wide with realization. I assumed wrong. We all did. We judged you unfairly. I smiled softly. At least you can admit it. You're the only one. Later that evening, as Nathan and I lay in bed under the soft glow of the moonlight streaming through the window, I traced the lines of his palm slowly. Any regrets about posting the photos? He asked quietly. I thought about it. No, I said finally. The photos forced them to face what they did. They needed to know the consequence of their choices, and I needed to stand up for myself. Nathan kissed my forehead. You handled it with more grace than I ever could have. I smiled faintly. The irony is, I would have been just as happy with a courthouse ceremony as long as they had been there to witness it. He tightened his arms around me. That's why I love you. 6 months later, we hosted a small dinner party for our first anniversary. My entire family attended, bringing thoughtful gifts and awkward smiles. The wounds weren't healed, not completely, they might never be. But for the first time, my mother pulled me aside as she was leaving. Her voice, usually sharp, softened. I learned something from this, she admitted. Showing up matters. Not the size of the event, not what I get out of it, just being there for the people I love. I hugged her, feeling the last icy shard inside my chest begin to melt. Better late than never, Mom. As the door closed behind the last guest, Nathan wrapped me in his arms and kissed my temple. Happy. I stared out at the moonlit ocean, thinking of everything we had survived. The cruelty, the loneliness, the quiet triumph. Getting there, I whispered. Then, laughing softly, he added, maybe for our 5th anniversary, a small vow renewal? Just family this time. I smiled at the symbolism of his suggestion. As long as you're there, the rest is just details. We stood there in the glow of our life together, and I realized something profound. The photos that truly mattered weren't the ones we posted to make a point. They were the quiet moments we had kept for ourselves, moments of forgiveness, growth, and unshakable love. They thought they had rejected me, but I had reclaimed my worth. Not tiny at all, but immeasurably vast.